The apartment door behind Lena continued to open slowly, the soft creak stretching unnaturally long in the silence, as if time itself had slowed down just to emphasize the moment. She didn't turn toward it. She couldn't. Her entire focus remained locked on the figure standing in front of her, the version of herself that no longer behaved like a reflection, no longer mirrored her movements, but stood on its own, calm, steady, and watching her with an unsettling awareness that felt far too real to deny. The dim light in the apartment barely touched the figure's face, yet Lena could still see it clearly enough to know one thing. This wasn't an illusion anymore. Her phone lay on the floor between them, its cracked screen glowing faintly as the final message from before remained frozen in place like a command waiting to be obeyed. Part 2 begins when you admit it. Lena's breathing was uneven, each inhale shallow, each exhale shaky. Her mind was no longer just confused, it was splitting, forcing her to hold two versions of the same memory at once. One she had lived with for 3 years, and one that was now pushing its way into reality whether she accepted it or not. The figure stepped closer, slow, measured, certain. "You remember now?" it said softly. But the voice didn't belong to Lena. It was John's. The sound hit her harder than anything else so far. Her chest tightened violently as her body reacted before her mind could process it. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. It felt like something inside her throat had locked, refusing to let her speak the truth, forming at the edge of her thoughts. Behind her, the apartment door opened wider. A cold draft slipped into the room, brushing against her back, sending a chill through her entire body. But it wasn't just cold air. It carried sound, faint at first, then clearer. Rain. Lena froze, because there was no rain outside, not tonight. Her phone suddenly buzzed on the floor. She flinched, her eyes snapping downward. The screen had changed. It was no longer cracked, no longer dim. It looked restored, clean, as if nothing had ever happened to it. A new message appeared. "Say it." Her fingers trembled as she slowly bent down and picked up the phone again. For a brief second, her reflection appeared on the screen. But something was wrong. The reflection wasn't aligned with her movement. It lagged, then shifted, and suddenly, the other version of her was standing directly behind her in the reflection, closer than before, close enough to touch. Her breath hitched violently as she spun around, but nothing was there. The space behind her was empty. The hallway ahead remained unchanged, yet when she turned back, the figure in front of her hadn't moved, still watching, still waiting. "Say it," it repeated. Lena shook her head slowly, backing away until her legs hit the edge of the sofa again. "No," she whispered, her voice barely holding together. I didn't do anything." But the words sounded wrong even to her, because the memory was no longer staying buried. It was rising, stronger, clearer. She saw the road again, the rain hitting the ground, John standing too close, the argument louder now, voices overlapping, tension rising, something breaking between them that couldn't be taken back. Her breathing grew uneven as the memory forced itself forward, no longer fragmenting, no longer hiding. Then, the moment before everything changed, her hand on him, not pushing, not pulling away, just there, frozen. And in that single moment of hesitation, John lost balance. Lena's breath stopped completely. She whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of what she was beginning to understand. The figure stepped closer again, now only a few feet away. You chose, it said calmly. Lena shook her head harder, panic rising again. No, it was an accident, she insisted, but her voice lacked strength, lacked certainty, lacked truth. The phone buzzed again in her hand. You watched it happen. Her chest tightened painfully. Because that part was undeniable. She hadn't run immediately. She had stayed. She had watched. Watched him fall. Watched him struggle. Watched him try to get up. Watched him call her name. Another voice note opened automatically. Rain. Closer now. Louder. Then John's voice came through. Weak. Strained. Help me? Lena squeezed her eyes shut instantly, shaking her head violently. Stop! Please! She whispered, but the audio continued. Her own voice followed. Faint. Distant. I can't. The voice note cut off. Silence slammed back into the apartment. The figure in front of her tilted its head slightly, and for the first time, its expression shifted, not calm anymore, knowing. You left, it said. Lena's knees weakened, forcing her to steady herself against the sofa. I didn't mean to, she whispered again, but the words felt empty now, like something she had repeated for so long they no longer carried meaning. Behind her, the open apartment door creaked again. The sound of rain grew louder, closer. Impossible. Her phone buzzed again. Look behind you! Lena froze completely. Her heart pounded violently in her chest. Slowly, carefully, she turned. The hallway outside her apartment was no longer dry. It was raining. Inside, water hitting the floor, spreading slowly toward her feet, and standing at the far end of that impossible, rain-filled hallway was John, still watching her, not broken, not distant, standing exactly as she remembered him before everything changed. Her breath caught sharply. Because this time, he wasn't a voice. He wasn't a memory. He was there. The version of Lena behind her whispered, You never left that night. The phone screen showed Lena still standing in the rain, not in her apartment, and John took one slow step toward her. Lena stood frozen at the edge of her apartment as the rain from the hallway crept slowly toward her feet, spreading across the floor in thin, reflective streams that shouldn't have existed inside a building. The sound of water hitting the ground echoed unnaturally, louder than it should have been, filling the space with a steady rhythm that made her chest tighten with every second. At the far end of that impossible hallway, John stood completely still, his figure partially blurred by the falling rain, yet unmistakably real. He wasn't broken. He wasn't lying on the ground like in her memory. He was standing upright, facing her, watching her with a calm that felt far more disturbing than anger ever could. Her breathing became shallow, uneven, her body refusing to move forward or backward as her mind struggled to decide whether what she was seeing was real or something far worse than real. The phone in her hand vibrated again, but she didn't look at it immediately. Her eyes were locked on John, because this time, he wasn't just a voice from a device. He was present. And then, he took a step forward. The sound of his foot hitting the wet floor echoed through the hallway, slow and deliberate, each movement controlled, as if he had all the time in the world. Lena's breath caught sharply in her throat. No, she whispered, shaking her head slightly, stepping back without realizing it. No, this isn't happening. But John didn't stop. Another step. Closer now. The rain didn't affect him the way it should have. It fell around him, through him almost, but never seemed to weigh him down. His expression remained unchanged, calm, steady, and focused entirely on her. Her phone buzzed again. This time, She looked. The screen displayed a single message. "He's not here for revenge." Lena's stomach dropped instantly, because that meant something worse. She slowly lifted her eyes back to John. "Then, why are you here?" she whispered, her voice barely holding together. John stopped walking, only a few steps closer than before, close enough now that she could see his face more clearly through the rain. And for the first time, he spoke. Not through the phone, not through a recording, directly. "You stayed." The words were soft, but they hit harder than anything else so far. Lena shook her head immediately. "No, I didn't. I left," she said quickly, but her voice lacked strength, like the truth was slipping away from her with every second. John tilted his head slightly, just like the figure behind her had done earlier. "You stayed," he repeated. Her chest tightened painfully as the memory surged again, clearer now, refusing to break apart this time. She saw herself standing in the rain. She saw John on the ground. She saw herself not moving, not helping, not leaving, just watching. "I didn't know what to do," she whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of it. The rain in the hallway intensified. Water now reached the edge of her apartment floor. John took another step forward. "You knew," he said calmly. Lena shook her head harder, tears forming in her eyes now. "No, I didn't," she insisted, but her voice was breaking completely. The phone buzzed again. She looked down. "Tell him the truth." Her hands trembled violently. She started, but the words caught in her throat. John stepped closer again, now standing just at the edge of the hallway, just before crossing into her apartment. "You watched me," he said. The sentence landed like a weight pressing down on her chest. "I was scared," she whispered. "You watched me," he repeated. Her breathing became unstable. "I didn't mean to. You watched me." Each repetition stripped away another layer of the lies she had built for herself over the years, until only one thing remained. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. Her phone buzzed again. "Say it!" Lena's entire body trembled as she slowly lifted her head to meet John's gaze fully. Her voice cracked. "I didn't help you." The moment the words left her mouth, everything changed. The rain stopped. Instantly. The hallway went silent. Too silent. John didn't move, didn't react the way she expected. Instead, something behind her shifted. A presence. Closer than before. Her phone screen flickered violently, then changed, showing the road again. But this time, John wasn't alone on the ground. There was another figure standing beside him, watching, not moving, not helping. Lena's breath stopped completely, because that figure was her. Still there, still watching. Her phone buzzed one final time. "You never left." John stepped into the apartment for the first time. The version of Lena behind her whispered, "We're still there." And the floor beneath her feet slowly turned into wet asphalt. The moment Lena admitted it, the apartment didn't feel like her apartment anymore. The silence that followed wasn't relief. It was heavier, deeper, like something had finally been unlocked. John stood at the edge of the hallway, no longer moving, no longer speaking, just watching her with that same calm expression that made everything feel worse. Then the floor beneath Lena's feet shifted. Not suddenly, slowly. The smooth surface of her apartment floor began to darken, the texture changing, roughening, until it no longer looked like tile. Her breath caught as she looked down. Wet asphalt, the same road, the same night. She stumbled back slightly, but there was nowhere to go. The transformation wasn't just under her feet. It was spreading. The walls around her dimmed, fading into darkness, while the faint outline of streetlights began to replace the soft glow of her apartment. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "No, this isn't real." But it was already happening. The sound of rain returned, soft at first, then heavier, falling around her, not outside, not in the hallway, but everywhere. Lena's breathing became uneven as she slowly lifted her head. She wasn't in her apartment anymore. She was standing on the road, back in that moment. John stood a few steps away from her now, not at the end of a hallway, but on the wet street, exactly where he had been that night. His clothes were soaked, his posture slightly unsteady, but his eyes were locked on her, clearer than they had ever been before. "You stayed," he said again. But this time, it didn't feel like an accusation. It felt like a fact. Lena shook her head slowly, tears forming in her eyes. "I didn't know what to do," she whispered. John took one small step closer. "You chose not to." Her chest tightened, because now she could see it, not just feel it. The moment replaying around her wasn't broken anymore. It wasn't fragmented. It was complete. She saw herself standing exactly where she was now. She saw John struggling to get up. She saw his hand reaching out. And she saw herself, not moving. Her breath caught painfully. "I was scared," she said weakly. John didn't respond immediately. Instead, he looked past her. Lena followed his gaze, and that's when she saw it. Another version of herself, standing a few feet behind her, watching, completely still, the same way she had been that night. Her heart dropped, because that version of her hadn't disappeared. It had stayed, still here, still in this moment. Her phone buzzed in her hand again. She didn't remember picking it up. The screen showed one message. "You're still here with him." Lena shook her head rapidly. No, I left," she whispered, but the words felt weak now, because she could see the truth. Part of her had never left that road, never moved, never helped, and never escaped. John's voice came again, softer this time. "You didn't just leave me." He paused. "Then, you left yourself here too." Lena's breath stopped completely. The other Lena stepped closer. For the first time, the rain suddenly stopped, but nothing moved, and John whispered, "Now, you have to choose again." The moment John said she had to choose again, the entire scene felt like it tightened around Lena. The rain that had just stopped hung in the air without falling, suspended like time itself had lost direction. The road beneath her feet was still wet, still cold, but completely still, as if the world was holding its breath, waiting for her response. John stood a few steps away, watching her with an expression that was no longer calm, but something deeper, expectant, like he already knew what she would do before she even decided. Behind Lena, the other version of herself took another slow step forward. This time, it didn't feel like a reflection anymore. It felt separate, real. Lena turned her head slightly, her breathing uneven, her voice barely coming out. "What is happening to me?" she whispered. John didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at both of them, the Lena standing in front of him and the one behind her, as if measuring something invisible between them. Then he spoke again, softer this time. "You split that night." Lena shook her head quickly. "No, that's not possible." But the memory pushed harder now, no longer fragmented. She saw it again, clearer than before. The road, the argument, John falling. But now there was something else layered into it. Her mind not fully leaving afterward. A version of her that stayed behind even after she ran. A version that never fully escaped what happened. Her chest tightened painfully. The other, Lena, stepped closer again, now only a few feet behind her. "You stayed there with me," John continued. Lena's voice broke. "I didn't mean to." John shook his head slightly. "That's not the part you're avoiding." Silence fell again. Heavy. Uncomfortable. The road around them remained still, but the air felt charged, like something was building toward collapse. Lena slowly looked down at her hands. They were shaking. But now she noticed something else. Faint marks on them, not physical injuries, but impressions, like memory trying to imprint itself onto her skin. Rain, dirt, cold. Her breath quickened. "No," she whispered again, stepping back instinctively, but the space behind her was already occupied. The other Lena was right there now, close enough to touch. John took one step forward. "You didn't just watch," he said. Lena's eyes widened slightly. "You chose what came after." Her mind resisted again, but this time the memory didn't fade. It expanded. She saw herself standing over John. She saw panic, but also hesitation. She saw the moment where everything could have changed and didn't. "I didn't push you," she said quickly, almost desperately. John stopped, looked at her directly. "I never said you did." That sentence landed harder than anything before. Lena froze, because that meant something else entirely. The truth wasn't about a push. It was about what she didn't do. Her breathing became unstable. Behind her, the second Lena raised a hand slowly. Not aggressive, not threatening, just mirroring, as if waiting. John's voice lowered. "You had a chance." Lena's lips trembled. "I was scared." "I know." A pause. Then, "You still chose it." The world around them began to feel unstable again. The road flickered slightly, like reality was struggling to maintain itself. The sound of distant rain returned, but faint, uneven, like it was coming from another place trying to break through. Lena looked between John and her other self, her mind collapsing under the weight of contradiction. Then her phone appeared in her hand again. She didn't remember picking it up. The screen lit instantly. One message. "Choose now." Lena's breath caught. John stepped closer. The other Lena stepped closer too. Both versions watching her now, waiting. And for the first time, Lena realized the choice wasn't about the past anymore. It was about which version of herself would remain. Both versions of Lena reached out at the same time. John said, "Only one of you gets to leave." And the road beneath them started cracking open. The moment John said only one of them would leave, the air around Lena felt like it tightened again, as if the world itself was narrowing down to a single outcome. Both versions of her stood facing her now, one in front, one behind, mirroring each other in silence, their presence creating a pressure that made it harder for her to breathe. The road beneath them continued to crack, slowly, thin lines spreading across the wet surface like fractures in glass, hinting that whatever space they were standing in was no longer stable. Lena's hands trembled as she looked between them, her mind struggling to keep hold of what was real. "What is this?" she whispered, her voice weak, almost broken. "Why are there two of me?" John didn't answer immediately. Instead, he took another slow step forward, his eyes still fixed on her. There was no anger in them now, only something quieter, something heavier, like acceptance of something that had already been decided long ago. "You've been running from yourself," he said finally. Lena shook her head quickly. "No, I've been trying to remember what happened." But even as she said it, she knew that wasn't entirely true anymore, because the memories weren't just returning, they were merging. The rain, the road, the argument, the fall, the silence afterward. But now layered into it was something she had never fully acknowledged before. A presence inside her that had remained even after she left that night. A version of her that never actually escaped the moment. The second Lena stepped closer behind her again. This time, her movement felt synchronized with Lena's heartbeat, as if they were no longer separate beings, but two expressions of the same broken memory. John's voice lowered. "You didn't split that night by accident." Lena's chest tightened. "What do you mean?" He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he looked at both versions of her again, and then said it. "You split because you couldn't accept what you became." Silence hit harder than before. Lena's breathing stopped for a moment. Her mind resisted the idea violently, but the memory didn't fight back this time. It expanded. She saw it. Not just the accident, not just the fall, but the aftermath. Standing there, not moving, not helping, not leaving immediately, and something inside her, breaking away in that moment, the version of her that couldn't accept what she had done, and the version that stayed behind with it. Her voice cracked. "That's not real." John stepped closer again. "It is the only reason I'm here." The second Lena raised her hand slightly again, and this time, Lena noticed something terrifying. The movement was no longer delayed. It was identical. Perfect synchronization. Like they were becoming one system trying to align again. The ground cracked further. A deep sound echoed through the road beneath them, like something underneath was trying to surface. Lena stepped back instinctively, but both versions of her moved with her at the same time. Her breath became uneven. No, I didn't choose this," she whispered. John stopped directly in front of her now, close enough that she could clearly see his face. Not angry, not vengeful, but certain. "You did," he said softly. A long pause followed. Then, "You just buried the part that knew." Lena's eyes widened slightly, because something in her chest shifted at that sentence. A memory she had never fully touched surfaced, deeper than the others. Not the accident, not the struggle, but the moment immediately after. The silence, the realization, and the choice not to call for help right away. Not because she couldn't, but because something inside her had frozen. The phone in her hand buzzed violently. She looked down. One message. "Accept it completely." Her hands trembled harder now. Both versions of her took another step closer at the same time. John watched quietly, waiting. And for the first time, Lena understood what the choice really was. Not between leaving or staying, but between becoming whole again or disappearing completely. The ground beneath her cracked even wider, and a deep sound echoed from below, like something was waking up. Both Lenas reached for each other at the same time. John said, "Only the truth survives this moment." And the road finally broke open beneath them. The moment the road finally gave way beneath them, everything happened at once. The cracks widened rapidly, splitting the wet surface open like something beneath had been waiting far too long to surface. Lena stumbled instinctively, her balance breaking as the ground stopped feeling solid. But both versions of her moved with her at the same time, perfectly synchronized, as if they were no longer separate bodies but different states of the same collapsing reality. John didn't move away. He simply watched, calm, certain. As the space beneath them began to fracture deeper, a low sound echoed upward, not like an explosion, but like pressure releasing after being held for too long. Lena's breathing became sharp and uneven as she looked down into the widening cracks. But instead of darkness, she saw something else forming below. A memory. Not just visual anymore, physical. The night itself was folding inward. Rain, streetlight reflections, the sound of tires far away, fragments of voices, all blending together beneath the broken road surface, as if the moment had been stored underneath reality this entire time. Lena shook her head quickly, stepping back, but there was nowhere stable left to step onto. "No, this isn't real," she whispered, her voice trembling. "This can't be real." John stepped closer again, now standing directly at the edge of the fractured ground. "You keep saying that," he said softly. Lena looked up at him, her eyes filled with panic and confusion. "I don't understand what you want from me." For the first time, John's expression shifted slightly. Not anger, not sadness, clarity. "I don't want anything," he said. A pause. Then, "I just need you to see it completely." Behind Lena, the second version of her reached forward again. But this time, Lena didn't resist. Her body moved slightly on its own, drawn toward the other version as if something inside her was finally aligning after years of separation. The ground cracked further, the memory beneath them rose closer, and Lena saw it. Everything. Not fragments, not flashes, the full night. She saw herself arguing with John. She saw the intensity rising between them. She saw his hand grabbing her wrist. She saw herself pulling away. But this time, there was no distortion, no missing pieces, no gaps for denial to hide inside. And then, the fall, but not as she remembered it. Not a simple slip, a moment of struggle, a sudden loss of balance, and her hand still on him as he went down. Lena's breath stopped completely. Her body froze. "I didn't," she whispered, but the sentence broke halfway through. "I didn't mean," John interrupted gently. "I know." Silence followed. Even the cracking stopped for a moment, because that wasn't the truth that mattered anymore. The truth was what came after. Lena's eyes widened as the memory continued. She saw herself standing over him. She saw him calling her name. She saw herself not moving immediately, not because she didn't care, but because something inside her had shut down. A delay, a pause, a moment too long. And in that moment, everything became irreversible. Her hands shook violently. "I froze," she whispered. John nodded slightly. "Yes." The second Lena stepped closer again, now directly beside her, not behind, not separate anymore, almost aligned. The cracks beneath them widened even more, and the memory below surged upward like it was finally breaking through completely. Lena's voice broke. "So, that's it? I killed you?" John shook his head slowly. "No." A pause. "Then, you couldn't save me." Silence hit harder than anything before, because that distinction changed everything. The pressure beneath the road reached its peak. The memory rose fully into them, and Lena felt it, the split collapsing. The two versions of her no longer resisting each other, becoming one again. Her knees weakened, her vision blurred, and for the first time, she didn't fight it. John stepped back slightly as the space between them filled with light and rain and sound all at once, and just before everything collapsed completely, he said one final thing. Soft. Final. "You're not being punished." A pause. "You're being whole again." The two Lenas merged into one. John disappeared as the memory fully took over, and Lena woke up back in her apartment, with no phone in her hand. Lena woke up suddenly in her apartment, gasping for air as if she had been pulled out of deep water. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, her eyes wide as she tried to orient herself. But something immediately felt wrong. The silence around her was no longer heavy with tension or presence. It was empty in a different way, like something had been removed entirely rather than simply gone quiet. She sat up slowly from the floor, her hands shaking as she looked around the room. The living room was intact again. The walls were solid. The floor was no longer wet asphalt. It was her apartment. Normal, familiar, still. But her body didn't believe it yet. Her breathing remained uneven as she slowly scanned the space again, her mind still caught between what she had just experienced and what she was now seeing. There was no hallway rain, no broken road, no second version of herself, no John standing at the edge of reality. Just silence. Then she noticed it. Her phone was gone. Lena froze slightly. Her heart rate picked up again immediately as she turned her head slowly, scanning the floor around her. The cracked device that had been with her through everything, the voice notes, the messages, the impossible recordings, was nowhere to be seen. "No," she whispered under her breath. "No, no." She stood up quickly now, her movements unsteady, checking the sofa, the table, the edges of the room. Nothing. It had completely disappeared. Her breathing became sharper. Because if the phone was gone, then what had she just experienced? A sound broke the silence, a soft vibration. Lena froze instantly. It wasn't coming from the room. It was coming from her. Slowly, hesitantly, she looked down at her hand. Nothing. Then she felt it again. A vibration. Inside her. Her breath caught sharply as she stepped back, shaking her head. "No. Stop," she whispered. But the sensation didn't stop. It pulsed faintly, like a notification she couldn't turn off. Then, a voice. Not external. Not from a device. From memory. "You're still here." Lena staggered slightly, gripping the edge of the sofa for support. "No," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I came back. I left it." But even as she said it, doubt crept in. Because something inside her felt different now. Not broken, not split, complete. But not in a comforting way. More like something had been reassembled incorrectly. She slowly walked toward the mirror on the wall, her steps cautious, hesitant, as if she was afraid of what she might see. When she reached it, she paused for a moment, her breathing shallow. Then she looked. At first, she saw herself, tired, shaken, present, but then her reflection shifted slightly, not dramatically, just enough. Her expression softened into something unfamiliar, calm, still, and behind her reflection, a faint outline appeared. John, standing just out of focus. Lena stumbled back instantly, her hand covering her mouth. No, you're not here," she whispered rapidly. "You're not here." But the reflection didn't respond. It only watched. Then the voice returned again. Calm, close. "You didn't come back alone." Lena shook her head violently, stepping away from the mirror. I did come back alone." But even as she said it, she wasn't sure anymore, because the silence in the apartment wasn't empty. It felt shared. Her breathing became uneven again as she slowly turned away from the mirror, but the sensation didn't leave her. It followed. Not physically, not visibly, internally. Like something had stayed behind in her mind when everything else collapsed. Her phone was gone. The road was gone. John was gone. But the memory wasn't. And neither was the part of her that had stayed there longer than she admitted. The lights flickered once, then stabilized. And in that brief moment of instability, she heard his voice one last time. Not loud, not distant, right beside her ear. Now you understand. Lena stood completely still, and for the first time since it began, she didn't say no. Her reflection smiled again, even though she wasn't moving. The apartment door slowly locked itself from the inside, and somewhere in the silence, a phone started ringing. The phone ringing broke the silence so suddenly that Lena flinched violently, her entire body reacting before her mind could even process where the sound was coming from. It wasn't loud in the normal sense. It was sharp, precise, like it was happening directly inside the room rather than somewhere outside of it. Her eyes moved quickly across the apartment, searching for the source, but there was no phone on the table, no device in her hand, nothing visible that could be making the sound. Yet it continued. Steady, unavoidable. Lena's breathing became uneven again as she slowly turned toward the center of the room, her instincts telling her not to move, even though her body was already responding on its own. "Stop!" she whispered shakily. "Please stop." But the ringing didn't stop. Instead, it changed. It became clearer, closer, directly behind her. Lena froze completely. For a moment, she didn't move at all. The sound filled the space around her, wrapping around her from every angle, until it felt like the apartment itself was the device ringing. Then, slowly, she turned. There was nothing there. But the ringing was louder now. And then it stopped. Instant silence. Too sudden, too clean. Lena stood frozen, her chest rising and falling in shallow breaths, waiting for something to happen. The apartment felt still again, but not peaceful, controlled, like something had just finished positioning itself. Then she heard it, a soft click. From inside the room, behind her, she turned slowly this time and saw it, her phone, back on the table, exactly where it had been before. Unbroken, undamaged, as if nothing had ever happened to it. Lena's breath caught sharply. "No," she whispered. "That's not possible." She took a slow step forward, her eyes locked on the device. Her hands were shaking again, but this time she didn't stop herself. She reached for it slowly, hesitantly, as if expecting it to disappear the moment she touched it. But it didn't. It stayed. Warm, alive. Then the screen lit up instantly. No delay, no warning. A single message appeared. "You're ready now." Lena's heart dropped. Her fingers tightened slightly around the phone. "Ready for what?" she whispered, but her voice felt distant even to her own ears. The screen flickered once, then changed. A video began to play, not a recording she remembered, not a voice note, a live feed, and what she saw made her freeze completely. It was her, standing in the apartment, but not this moment, not this version, another one, slightly different, still her face, but calmer, still, watching the camera directly, as if she knew she was being watched. Lena's breathing stopped, because in the video, she was not alone. Behind her reflection in the feed, John stood again, clearer than before, more defined than ever. And this time, he wasn't fading. He was fully visible, alive in the frame. Lena shook her head slowly, stepping back. No, I'm here. I'm here now." she whispered, but the image on the phone didn't change. John looked directly into the camera and spoke. Not to her in the video, to her now. "You didn't come back." Lena's grip on the phone tightened. "I did," she said quickly. "I'm here." But John shook his head slowly. "You came back wrong." The apartment lights flickered slightly. Lena's breathing became uneven again as she looked around the room, panic rising. "What does that mean?" she whispered. The video zoomed slightly, closer to John, and his voice softened, almost calm, almost final. "You only brought part of yourself back." Lena's stomach dropped, because suddenly, she understood. The split wasn't gone. The merging wasn't complete. Something had stayed behind, something that didn't return with her. Her eyes widened slightly as she whispered, "No." The screen flickered violently, and for a brief second, she saw it. Another version of her, still on the road, still there, still watching. John standing beside her, both of them unmoving, waiting. The screen cut back instantly. Silence returned to the apartment. Lena stood frozen, staring at the phone. Then John's voice came one last time, not from the device, not from memory, from inside her reflection in the screen. "You're still there." The lights went out, and in the darkness, the phone lit up again, displaying a final message. Part 3 is already happening. Lena's reflection didn't match her movement anymore. John appeared behind her in the real room again, and the apartment door slowly opened from the inside.